That we never knew until the End Bad Governance protest that we have this amount of security mobilization in the country. Yeah, that means we can actually tackle the insecurity problem in the country if we want. It simply means some people in somewhere do not want the insecurity problem in the country to be solved. Because here in the FCT, the police said they deployed over 4,000 something officers. Imagine what 4,000 officers will do in Zamfara, Sokoto, and Kebbi. It will have prevented the emir who was just killed in Sokoto from being killed. You know, an emir was abducted, displayed by...
Hello, wonderful followers and subscribers of Holy Ghost, and I hope this video finds you well. Please, if today is your first time coming across my video, I want to say a big thank you to you for stopping by to watch. I count it the privilege to see you here. Please, before diving into this topic, kindly do me a favor by giving this video a thumbs up and please share. Guys, we saw during the last protest, End Bad Governance protest, military, police, all of them came out with full force, you understand, against unarmed, innocent protesters. Well, can I shock you? The bad guys in the north, the Boko boys, now they got one of the emir apprehended. Guys, they chopped the guy neck. These guys, these bad boys, they posted it on their TikTok handle. And this man cried out to Nigerian government to help him. Guess what? They could not help. But when they come to protest, as I speak to you, over 1,000 Nigerians who came out to protest are still held in detention just for coming out to cry to the government, we are hungry. So when it comes to insecurity, the government, they are as weak as babies. When it comes to protecting the life of the citizen, they are as weak as babies. But when it comes to, using force, coming out against unarmed protester like this war, that is when they have power. Guys, human rights lawyer and activist Deji, the guy has just got your president Pablo Escobar, Detroit Bafuka. Watch this video. Please, as you are watching this sweet and interesting video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up so our Facebook and YouTube can recommend it, and please share it. God bless you.
That's how it was described, and that's how long the protests lasted. What do you think they achieved, and what did they fail to achieve?
I think by and large we've achieved to reinforce the fundamental right to freedom of assembly in our country, and the Nigerians are not slaves in their country, and that we are not a conquered people, because it was almost appearing that Nigeria was an annex of the Bola Tinubu empire, and many of the traditional rulers who had gone to pay homage in the presidential villa, and also traditional religious leaders, and who were now trying to compel people not to protest. It was beginning to look like a monarchy. But on August 1st, 2024, we proved to the Nigerian people that we are not a conquered people, and that we do not cower in the face of intimidation, threats, and harassment. In fact, the security architecture in the country practically was threatening the entire nation, that they must not protest. But we proved it. The protests did happen. The protests are not yet over. So people who are in government or supporters or sympathizers of government should not celebrate yet. Nigeria is like the Titanic. Nigeria is going through unimaginable turbulence. The only people who are having a good time are those who are in government, or sympathizers of those who are in government. If you look all around us, people are wearing different kinds of life jackets just to barely survive. Businesses are folding up daily. Even international businesses are exiting the country. When we, the protesters, we asked for rice, we never at any point asked for rice in the course of the good governance protest, but the government was sharing rice. Even before the protest, during the protest, and after the protest, we asked for an improved security architecture for the country. The government is sharing rice. We asked that they bring back subsidy. The government is sharing rice. We asked that they amend the constitution to have a people-oriented constitution, because this particular constitution was written by the military. They just gathered together and wrote the constitution. We asked for a people-oriented constitution. They are sharing rice. The people asked for cheaper fuel, and that the refineries in the country should work. They share rice. So rice sharing is not the solution to our economic, societal, and political problem. We asked for cutting costs of governance in the country, the president buys a new presidential jet. He launches it in grand style. He goes off to go and chill in France. So this government, they are insensitive. They are deaf and dumb. Even if protesters were to negotiate with the government on armed protesters across the country, they shot and killed them. That's the kind of government you want to negotiate with. The fears of the protesters that if they had a leader, that they will be targeted were justified during the protest, because even right here, I was right there in Eagle Square, and the police were attacking us on armed protesters. It took the intervention of even other security agencies to tell the police to stop attacking protesters right here. The police attacked journalists. Thank God your colleagues. I saw at least 3 of your colleagues from this media platform who were at the stadium when the police attacked us. So when people come and say that the protesters were not ready to negotiate, how can you say people are not ready to negotiate when the government is not making any attempt to meet any demands before the protesters? I was on this platform before the protest, and I said the president can still prevent this protest from even taking place in the first place. That the president can meet 1 or 2 of the demands of the protesters. And if the president does so, I even suggested that if the president brings back fuel subsidy, that he will be celebrated in this country. And that because there's already fuel subsidy, so the idea of saying that subsidy is gone is a scam, is a lie. That we pay triple what we used to pay for subsidy. In fact, this president should return us back to the subsidy regime of Buhari, which was better for the nation when a liter of fuel was selling for 167 naira. Now, no subsidy. We are paying almost 1 trillion naira per month. Under Buhari,
we almost 1,000.
Yes.
Not 1 trillion.
Yes. So
right.
Under Buhari, we were paying almost about 300 and something billion per month.
Right.
To cushion the effect of fuel subsidy. So
okay, you mean overall?
Overall
payment.
You
were talking about per
overall payment. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, you've set out your stall there. Let me give Daniel Bwala a chance. I mean, we see. I wonder how many bags of rice you might have got. Given that there's a lot of rice floating around the place.
I haven't got any, but let me tell you this. You see, my brother Deji, in his last words, contradicted himself. He said, we simply asked the president to bring back subsidy. In the same sentence, he said, in fact, they have not removed fuel subsidy. So you don't know which one.
Well, I mean, the least the government could do is acknowledge what the situation is and give the people a true picture of what is going on, and then they can make that assessment.
And this is what will work if there is an identifiable leadership. You see, you have to look at the protests and juxtapose that with the trade union, Nigerian Labour Congress.
Yeah, but I don't mean to interrupt you. The protesters are Nigerians. Mm-hmm. They're simply people who took the angst of Nigerians onto the streets. But the president still owes it to the Nigerian people, right, irrespective of whether he speaks to the protesters or not.
Yes, which is what the president was doing consistently in the days leading to the protest. And secondly, the protest, if it were a spontaneous protest, you would say there would have been no need for identifiable leadership because it's spontaneous. This was a well-planned and organized protest. Certain individuals gave a date, produced demands, shared it, gave timelines, talk about where to meet, and that there are human beings planning it. The government said, can you come, let's have a talk. Unfortunately for them and to their disadvantage, they refused to come up. So after they exhausted the 10 days now, there is nothing they can point at and say, we're going to hold government responsible on A, B, and C. And my point is, if they had secured representation, where you come to the president and say it. You see, the idea of coming to meet with the government is so the government who can tell you from what you are demanding, what can be, what cannot be, what requires time, and you can have an understanding.
That's a good point. But in fairness to the protesters, it's not as if the government said, just to say, we will dialogue with you. The president didn't say, this is the person who's been appointed to lead the discussion. In other words, he's holding the protesters to account, or you are, saying, well, you don't have any leaders. But the government didn't say, well, here are the people we want you to negotiate with. So go and approach those people.
No, because that's the wrong way to do it. You see, there is a government. Nigeria is a government.
Has a government.
And Nigeria has a government.
Yeah.
Identified leadership in the president. And he has cabinet members. So there is an identified government. It is when they bring their demands and they ask you, get your leadership.
Well, they brought their demands.
Yes, so that what I'm saying is the demand is in the social media. You say, identify your leaders in survey talk. So let's assume, I'm giving an assumption. Deji, Adeyanju, and a few others now said, okay, we are leaders and these are our demands. We want to speak with the government. You will come to the president or any official of government. The president will now set up a committee or team. The same thing with the Nigerian Labour Congress. And then the people with the team will sit down and have a talk. Now,
well, it's a chicken and an egg situation.
Yeah,
I mean, the government could have done its part and left these people to do theirs. But let me bring you, to interrupt, let me bring you in, Deji. I wonder if you'd like to respond to the things he said.
Yes, so basically, this is not the first time protesters are protesting and having demands. The demands of the protesters during NSAS was not met. While NSAS was going on, key leaders of the NSAS movement met with government, but nothing was done. You know, do you meet a government that is not willing, not ready to negotiate? You know, that because look at the amount of resource that was put into stopping this protest. Imagine we just put that energy into fixing the country. Look at, we never knew until the End Bad Governance protest that we have this amount of security mobilization in the country. That means we can actually tackle the insecurity problem in the country if we want. It simply means some people in somewhere do not want the insecurity problem in the country to be solved. Because here in the FCT, the police said they deployed over 4,000 something officers. Imagine what 4,000 officers will do in Zamfara, Sokoto, and Kebbi. It will have prevented the emir who was just killed in Sokoto from being killed. You know, an emir was abducted, displayed by bandits, killed, an announcement was made by bandits in a country that has government. In this same country, protesters, 1,400 protesters have been arrested by the protester in chief, who has always been protesting, who is a chief critic of others. These are people who call a sitting president kindergarten president and all sorts of names. And nobody had any issue with them. Why? It's now their turn to receive criticism and to receive protests. All of a sudden, protesters now must meet government. Protesters now must have an identified leader. Protesters now must assemble at a particular venue.
In fairness, Deji, I mean, you know, in fairness to what Daniel Bwala was saying, you don't just say something and then the government will just say, okay, we'll do it. You see what I mean? I mean, there has to be a process of explaining to you what the pros and cons are of the demands that you're making, because they are the ones who are controlling government. What about gesture? I mean, the president did make gestures, let's face it. I mean, he came out, he spoke to the people, he said he was willing to engage with the people. What about the gestures that have been made? Like, for example, we heard recently that the National Assembly said they're going to reduce their salary for 6 months. President Tinubu recently told his chief of staff to ensure that the cost of governance is cut by slashing the size of his entourage on foreign and domestic trips, as well as those of the vice president, the first lady, and ministers. That's a cost of governance reduction measure, isn't it? That suggests some measure of goodwill on the part of the government.
For us, from where we are standing, we do not see any sign of goodwill from the president. The most brazen of lack of any care for the Nigerian people is the presidential jet that he just launched. 150, whopping 150
I have to
billion.
admit, that's a difficult one to justify. But I'll come to you on that.
Whopping 150 billion. The jet that he replaced is still almost a new jet. In the US presidential jet is almost 50 years old. The British Prime Minister was still flying commercial of recent. Look at, even when it comes to cost of governance, the US president, everything he eats in the White House, he pays for it. If he orders any fish, he pays. anything.
It's not like you like fish.
No. I'm speaking to the heart of cutting costs
Right, I
in
understand
governance.
what you mean.
And so, look at the convoy of the president. The day the president was going to France, I was coming from Lagos.
Yeah, but he just said that he wants to cut.
The day that the president was going to France, I was coming from Lagos. My Dr. Charles, you will not believe the convoy of the president.